Hey everyone, welcome back, and thank you for being here today. I want to talk directly to you because there has been a lot of noise, rumors, confusion, and mixed messaging around this potential $2,000 payment, sometimes called a stimulus check, and sometimes referred to as a dividend payment by the president. Over the past few months, many of you have been asking whether this is real, who qualifies, and when anything might actually happen. Now, we finally have a fresh update straight from the White House, and for the first time in a long while, this update brings real clarity, real timelines, and a much stronger sense that this proposal is moving out of the talking phase and into something more concrete. Just yesterday, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett sat down for an interview and revealed new details that go far beyond vague promises. He explained when we could realistically see an official proposal, how confident the administration is about funding, and why the economic situation has shifted enough to make this possible. This is important because Kevin Hassett isn't a random commentator or someone speculating from the outside. He's one of the president's top economic advisors, and is even being discussed as a possible future Federal Reserve chair. When someone in that position speaks this directly, it matters. Before we go any deeper, I want to be clear about why I cover this topic so closely. I know what it feels like to struggle financially, to watch prices go up while income stays the same, and to feel ignored while decisions are being debated in Washington. For years, I've focused on breaking down financial relief programs, benefit updates, and policy changes in plain language so you can understand what's actually happening without the spin, without the hype, and without false promises. My goal is to give you honest information so you can prepare, not panic. Now let's talk about what's really going on with these $2,000 payments. The president has been mentioning this idea since last summer, framing it not as a traditional stimulus check but as a dividend payment. The reasoning behind that language is important. The administration has been pointing to tariff revenue generated through trade policies and negotiations, arguing that when the government brings in extra revenue, some of that money should be returned directly to American households. In other words, if the country is collecting more, families should see some of that benefit. Back in early November, the Treasury Secretary indicated that these payments would be targeted, not universal. The income threshold that has consistently been mentioned is $100,000 per year. That number has come up again and again, and it's the clearest guideline we have right now. What's critical to understand, and I want to stress this because it's one of the biggest sources of confusion, is that eligibility is based on income, not employment status, not whether you file taxes regularly, and not whether you're receiving benefits. If you are on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or any other fixed income program, you are not automatically excluded. Being retired does not disqualify you. Being disabled does not disqualify you. Not having a job does not disqualify you. The only thing that matters, based on everything we've heard so far, is whether your income falls under that $100,000 threshold. That's it. Period. Now let's get into the big update from Kevin Hassett, because this is where the story really changes. Over the summer, he had publicly expressed uncertainty about whether there was room in the federal budget for payments like this. At that time, economic conditions were less clear, deficits were higher, and the margin for new spending was tighter. But now, according to Hassett, the situation has changed significantly. He pointed to several key factors. First, the economy has posted multiple quarters of nearly 4% growth, which is stronger than many analysts expected. Second, the federal government has run a surplus for several consecutive months, something we haven't seen consistently in quite some time. Third, the deficit is down by approximately $600 billion compared to last year. Taken together, these developments have shifted the budget outlook in a meaningful way. Because of this, Hassett said he is now confident there is space for this type of payment. That's a major shift in tone. Moving from, "I'm not sure we can afford this," to, "I'm confident there's room," is not a small change. It signals that internal budget discussions are leaning toward feasibility rather than doubt. Then he said something even more important. He stated that he expects the president to bring an official proposal to Congress in the new year. That means this is no longer just an idea being floated at rallies or mentioned in speeches. An official proposal is a formal step that triggers legislative action. It means language gets drafted, numbers get finalized, and Congress is asked to vote. Let's pause for a moment and really understand what that means. For months, people have been stuck in a cycle of maybe, we'll see, and it's being discussed. Now, for the first time, we have a senior White House official saying he expects a proposal to be introduced. Not hoped for, not talked about, expected. That's a big deal. According to Hassett, this proposal would likely be introduced in early 2026. While that might sound far away, the timeline makes sense when you consider how legislation actually moves. The administration needs to finalize funding sources, determine eligibility rules, and coordinate with congressional leadership before anything can be formally introduced. The funding itself is expected to come, at least in part, from tariff revenue. However, as Hassett made clear, Congress would still need to appropriate the funds. That's not unusual. Any federal spending requires congressional approval. The encouraging part is not that Congress needs to act, but that there is already a clear legislative pathway for how this could happen. This is where reconciliation bills come into play. Congress has already indicated plans to pursue at least 2 more reconciliation packages between now and early 2027. A reconciliation bill is a powerful tool because it allows legislation to pass the Senate with a simple majority of 51 votes, instead of the usual 60 votes required to overcome a filibuster. This process was recently used to pass a massive tax package, so we know it's not just theoretical. It's been used successfully. If these $2,000 payments are included in a reconciliation bill, they could be passed without bipartisan support. From a political perspective, that makes this far more likely. It also means the party in power would receive full credit for the payments, which matters a great deal with midterm elections approaching. That political incentive cannot be ignored. Historically, direct payments to voters are one of the most powerful policy tools during election cycles. Now let's talk about timing in more realistic terms. Hassett said early 2026 for the proposal, but what does early actually mean? Based on how campaigns operate and how messaging works, a proposal introduced too late would lose much of its political impact. Once March rolls around, the focus shifts heavily toward campaigning. If the administration wants this to be a centerpiece of its midterm strategy, the proposal needs to be out early, likely within the first 6 weeks of the year. That puts the most realistic window between January and mid-February. If we don't see an official proposal by then, it becomes much less likely that this will move quickly. But if we do see it in that window, that's a strong sign that this is being pushed seriously. Even if the proposal is introduced early, payments would not go out immediately. Congress would still need to debate and vote on the bill. Once passed, the IRS would need time to process and distribute payments. Realistically, if everything moves smoothly, actual payments would likely arrive in spring or early summer of 2026. Now let's clearly break down who would qualify, based on everything we know right now. Households earning under $100,000 per year are the primary target. We don't yet know whether that refers to individual income or combined household income, or whether there will be phase-outs like previous stimulus checks. Those details will matter, but the $100,000 figure has been consistent. Social Security recipients would likely qualify if their income is under the threshold. This includes retirement benefits, SSI and SSDI. Filing a tax return is not a requirement for eligibility itself, although it may be necessary for processing. Seniors, regardless of age, would be included if their income qualifies. Veterans receiving VA benefits would also qualify under the same income rules. Parents may see additional payments per child, though this has not been confirmed yet. Previous stimulus programs included child add-ons, so it's possible, but not guaranteed. Unemployed workers whose income has dropped below the threshold would qualify. People with disabilities, whether through SSDI, VA disability, or other programs, would qualify based on income, not work status. The key message here is simple but important. This payment is about income level. It is not about whether you are working, retired, disabled, or unemployed. It is not about whether you receive benefits. If your income is under the threshold, you are likely eligible. What makes this update especially encouraging is not just the content, but the context. The White House economic advisor has shifted from uncertainty to confidence. The economic data supports that shift, with stronger growth, lower deficits, and temporary surpluses. There is a clear legislative mechanism available through reconciliation. And there is a political incentive to act sooner rather than later. That does not mean this is guaranteed. It's important to be honest about that. Proposals can be delayed, modified, or blocked. Numbers can change. Eligibility rules can shift. But compared to where things stood just a few months ago, this is the most concrete progress we've seen. So what should you be doing right now? First, plan to file your 2024 taxes as early as possible. If this payment moves forward, the IRS will almost certainly use the most recent tax return on file to determine eligibility and income. Filing early reduces delays and confusion. Second, make sure your information with the IRS is up to date. This includes your mailing address and direct deposit details. If your bank account has changed or you've moved, update that information now. When payments go out, you want them to reach you without issues. Third, if you don't normally file taxes, pay close attention to future guidance. In previous stimulus programs, non-filers were sometimes required to submit simple returns or use special tools to receive payments. Being prepared for that possibility is important. Fourth, be extremely cautious about scams. Whenever stimulus payments are discussed, scammers take advantage of the situation. The IRS will never contact you by phone, text, or email, asking for personal information to receive a payment. Any message claiming otherwise is a scam. Finally, while waiting for this potential payment, check whether you qualify for other assistance programs right now. Programs like SNAP, LIHEAP, Medicaid, and others can provide immediate relief. You don't have to wait and struggle if help is available today. I want to speak directly to some of the groups who have been reaching out the most. Parents, I know how expensive everything has become, from groceries to school supplies to childcare. If this payment happens, it could provide meaningful relief. Make sure your dependents are properly listed on your tax return. Seniors living on fixed incomes have been especially hurt by inflation. Even with cost of living adjustments, many feel left behind. This payment is not tied to your work history. Focus on keeping your information current. Veterans, whether you are working, retired, or disabled, your service matters. If your income qualifies, you deserve this support. People with disabilities, this is not a judgment on your ability to work. It's about income. If you qualify, you should receive the payment. Unemployed workers or those with reduced hours should make sure their reduced income is reflected in their tax filings. That could make the difference in eligibility. Now let me be completely honest. Is this guaranteed? No. There is still uncertainty. But this is the strongest signal we've had since this idea was first mentioned. A senior White House advisor is on record saying he expects a proposal. The economic conditions support it. The legislative pathway exists. The political motivation is there. That doesn't mean you should rely on this money to pay next month's rent. But it does mean you should be informed, prepared, and cautiously optimistic. I know many of you are tired of hearing soon and maybe. You need help now. I understand that frustration deeply. What I can tell you is that this update represents real movement. We now have a timeline, an income threshold, and confirmation that the administration believes there is room in the budget. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Use available resources. Stay informed, but don't let the uncertainty overwhelm you. Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we should learn much more. As soon as an official proposal is introduced, I will break down every detail so you know exactly what it means for you. If this information helped you, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps ensure you don't miss important updates. Share this with anyone who has been asking about these payments. Leave your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, you're not alone. I'll see you next time.